Welcome to Hot Takes, brought to you by 50cupstea.com, where united we sip, discuss, and learn. Join us as we dive into the hottest takes on culture, business trends, and the threads that bind us. Get ready for inspiring stories, candid conversations, and a fresh perspective on living a healthy, fulfilled life. Grab your cup and tune in. Let's get started.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of the 50 Cups Hot Takes. And I do this just for the tea. I just do. And the brilliant monologue that Jim has with every one of these hot takes. And Jim Baker, of course, is the owner of the tea company, but also just a phenomenal human being, very successful entrepreneur. Jim, it's always good to see you. And I'm kidding. I do this for the content, not necessarily the tea. But let me lead off by saying hello. And what do you got in the way of tea?
Thanks for hosting again, and looking forward to our discussion today. Clearly, we had a sleepover last night. We watched a little Netflix, had a little popcorn, and we both decided to wear gray blazers today. So,
that's right.
It's always good to bond with you.
Yes.
Yeah, so today we have, due to the beautiful spring in our neck of the world, that's spewing clouds of pollen everywhere.
Amazing.
My black car is now a yellow black.
Yes.
And we had some rain last night, which was great.
Yes.
But now I have yellow splotches all over my car. I was hoping it would wash it all off, but it's okay. I mean, the pine pollens are bursting and we have pollen everywhere. And
spring is in the air, man.
Yeah, it's 2 week type of situation. But I thought to honor that, we would go with good old fashioned.
Don't say it's green tea.
My mom's recipe, sweet tea.
Oh, good.
So a little black tea, little organic, not a lot, sugar, and some freshly squeezed lemons. And so I'm going to pour it out.
Oh, terrific.
And I think you'll like it. I think it's way better than any brand that is out there commercially at this point in time. So enjoy.
Well, I'm going to give it a shot here. I have yet to taste any of your teas that I did not like. They've all been fabulous. And I'm not just saying that. But this is spectacular. This is great. You've been holding out, Jim.
Yeah. How about that?
You know, interestingly enough, those of you watching, you could join us on a cup of tea right now. All you have to do is go online, right? And order it. You make it very easy.
Etiquette.com, right? Yeah.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed something, Jim? I'd love to get your take on this. And that is, recently there's been a lot of folks who have disliked a particular car brand, and they seem to be protesting against it, but even going beyond that, you know, and burning it and threatening people. I'm just wondering to get your take on it. How do you motivate people to do that? Or is this even people being motivated or rather paid? I mean, what are your thoughts?
It's unbelievable.
It is.
And I used to make fun of my friends who had Teslas because, you know, some of them were in love with the technology, thought it was kind of cool, cell phone on wheels, you know, kind of thing.
Right.
And it self-drives and everything else. And others truly bought the car because they felt like they were, in effect, saving the environment. You know, with these electric cars, they dug too deep to understand how much energy is going to be needed for charger stations and to charge these cars in general going forward. And that most of our power plants today are coal, natural gas, or you know, good old fashioned oil that obviously has to continue to perpetuate in order to be able to, you know, charge these cars. Right. Then on top of that, I don't think a lot of people thought about, well, what happens when the batteries need to be changed and disposed of? You know, where does that lithium go? And all that good stuff. But nonetheless, they were devoted car base, so to speak. And it just blows my mind that people out there, whether they're paid or not, I personally think they are paid to go out and destruct these cars. And it's one thing to protest, but it's another thing altogether to vandalize or burn brand new, you know, inventory just simply because they don't like, you know, the person who invented the Tesla company. And so I'm thinking they have to be paid, and they clearly must be given legal protection as well, you know, as a backup. But it's weird because, you know, the Tesla was supposed to be this brand, this number one brand in the world. By the way, over in China and elsewhere, it's still doing great. And it'll continue to do great here in the US once we get over the speed bump, I'm sure. But, you know, it seemed like everybody loved the Tesla more so on the environmental side, probably than on the technology side. So these same people who probably would protest for, a greener country are also the same people who are actually burning these cars. And what happens when you burn the car?
Oh, well, all the chemicals go right up in the air.
It's right up in the air.
I believe they're deadlier than is it flatulence? I'm trying to use the appropriate word there. But yes, it's.
I mean, it's way worse than methane, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure it is.
So if you think about it, I mean, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If they really wanted to, I guess, hurt the brand, they'd come up with their own competing brand that maybe it could go 500 or 600 miles before it needs to be charged as opposed to 300 now. Maybe it could be 100% self-driven. Who knows, right? To me, that's the way I think you fight something that you dislike. You give the consumer a better choice. In this case, destroying it only shows weakness, in my opinion. It just simply means that you can't fight it. Therefore, let's try to destroy it. But what's the reaction to that? Like someone like me, I'm actually considering buying a Tesla.
I was going to say, you're going to get the folks who think climate change is a scam buying Teslas now.
Yeah, and politics aside, I'm not, I like Elon Musk. I don't love him.
I do too.
I think he's flawed, just like everybody else is in this world. But he's done great things for our country. And, I just don't understand what's wrong with trying to save money in a government, especially when you and I and everybody else that's going to watch this pays taxes every single day. Now, could he do it better in terms of his messaging, and could he be kinder? I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. But, does that still, with all that said, it just makes zero sense to me why somebody want to burn inventory. Just doesn't make any sense.
Well, it doesn't, especially if you're trying to take the company down. And once you burn one Tesla, the insurance company comes in and has to replace it by buying another Tesla. So I'm not sure how much headway you're making there. I don't know if the message plays well either. I think most Americans, regardless of political affiliation, look at that and just shake their head and said, this is beyond stupid and nuts. Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's working. And guess what, too? The people that are in the market, they had a chance to rebuy Tesla at 50% of its stock price a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah.
So they're doubling down. They're going to buy more stock. Stock's going to eventually go up again. And so the rich are going to continue to get richer. So, what's the end game, I guess, is what I'm trying to figure out with some of these, crazy things that go on these days.
Well, I feel a little better knowing they're actually, more than likely anyway, paid rather than having people motivated to do it purely for crazy stuff. Yeah.
I'm sure there's some volunteers out there, but I'm sure there's a lot that are paid.
Well, another area where people are, and I've actually just talked to a couple of people who have tried to fix this, and that is healthcare. In particular, if you don't mind me moving to the next subject. But I mean, they're kind of related in the sense that, it's the industry itself. There was actually a bill that I believe was presented in California, and it's named after the guy who killed the healthcare CEO. So they're actually going down that route. There's that sentiment about healthcare insurance, particularly, and insurance and healthcare itself. They're all tied together, Jim. And you've had a guest on even not that long ago. Would you have a liver transplant? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Ted Phillips.
So, I mean, you got a perspective on this, and I have a daughter going through cancer treatment, and the expenses beyond anything I could ever imagine. So what's your take on this?
Yeah, so this is a little less about insurance and a little bit more about just in general medical decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll digress for 1 second. Where it's kind of like the Tesla thing. Why is the victim in the United Healthcare murder the actual murderer and not the person who was murdered? I mean, it literally boggles my mind. Whereas you look at who was murdered, the victim in this case, he's a father. He had kids. He didn't come from a lot of money like the shooter did.
Mm-hmm.
Shooter was a very privileged individual who went to a very good school, who was smart. He had advantages. And whereas the victim, I don't think had as many advantages. And yet he was self-made and he achieved great things. Now, I'm not saying the insurance industry is perfect. by no means is. But where in this world do we have bills named after the shooter and not the victim? Like we're upside down these days.
And that's the tie-in with Tesla. Because you wonder, you have women who want to date and marry him. I mean, they're attracted to, I guess, the bad boy. But again, you're choosing something that is, in this case, a murderer. But the Tesla and what you're doing in destroying him is a felony as well. I mean, you're actually celebrating something that most of us, at least in the past, felt repulsed by, right?
Sure.
So how do we get here? Why is this happening?
It's crazy. And all these people that hate insurance companies, great. I get it. Let's try to fix it. Let's not murder somebody, though. And, those same people, though, if that happened to one of their family members, they would not be singing that same tune that they are right now. But let me get back to what the original thought was. I interviewed Ted Phillips. If you haven't seen it, it's a very good interview. He had a liver transplant about 4 or 5 years ago. Thankfully, he's doing really well right now.
Good.
But to get on a transplant list, you have to have they call it a Melton score, and it has to be close to 30. I have no idea how they, score you, but nonetheless, the higher the score, the more critical you are, and the faster, hopefully, you get a transplant. And there's, I think, 7 or 8 centers throughout the country where you can get these. It's all region-based and everything else where you can get these transplants. So my brother-in-law was diagnosed with bile duct cancer, which obviously affects the liver. And so he, based on his prognosis and his diagnosis and treatment and et cetera, you have to go through certain steps. And all that time you're being scored.
Okay.
And I think his original score might have been closer to 20. But as he went through 3 or 4 rounds of chemo and doing some holistic things on his own, he went and got scanned in February. And, he calls us up and says, "Hey, just want to let you know, the tumor shrunk." But the oncologist said that the treatment that you're under isn't designed to cure you. It's simply to make sure it doesn't metastasize, because if it metastasizes, you're not on the list anymore. It's all over but the crying. But to, keep you basically in that bullpen, so to speak, to get this transplant. So he goes, so the good news is my tumor shrunk. He goes, the bad news is my Melton score is now 8.
Oh, no.
So it's dropped. Now, most people would be like, wow, that's great. But
the prognosis is the same.
Prognosis potentially is the same.
Right.
And also where he might have been, according to the oncologist, months away from getting the liver transplant, he's now 1 to 2 years away.
Oh, my.
So then he says, well, what's the next steps? And the oncologist says, we're going to keep doing treatment. We're going to keep doing chemo. Then we're going to go to radiation. And then after radiation, we're going to go to immunotherapy. Well, how long is that going to be? I don't know. We're going to just keep doing it.
In order to prolong his life in hopes that he eventually gets a liver, which could be years down the road?
So what I'm getting at, though, is that in most cases, if you're on prolonged chemo, the chemo actually kills you before the cancer kills you.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So he's experiencing neuropathy in his feet, for example. He's got a lot of side effects with the chemo, just like most people do that are bombarded. So where the paradox comes into play is, okay, great. His Melton score dropped. Now he can't get the liver transplant, which, by the way, will cure him, according to the doctors. He has to wait longer, but now he's in this longer treatment path, which potentially could harm him more. So the puzzlement for me is, I don't understand this whole process, because good news basically begets more treatment, which could end up
killing him,
harming him or killing him.
Mm-hmm.
And he could get the liver down the road, let's say a year or 2. But once he's recovered from the liver, he might not be able to walk, or he might not hear anymore because of the chemo, or he might not see anymore because of the chemo, because he was on this bombardment of chemicals for too long. So that's where I get frustrated with the medical community. And the bigger issue really is there's nobody out there right now giving him a direct path, where there could be a balance between the treatments and the wait list in order to get on this, to get the transplant finally.
But they had to give him treatment in order to stop it from metastasizing,
Absolutely.
which would eliminate his option for a liver transplant. But you'd like to think they wouldn't give him enough to stop one thing, but it almost feels like maybe you should have rolled your dice and just kind of went with it for a couple of months with no treatment and see where your score would be. I don't know. I don't know enough about this, Jim, but
yeah, I don't know.
I see your frustration, but he's in a position now where obviously it would have been better to get the higher score and get the liver transplant.
It's almost
right.
That's kind of the way I think about it. It's almost as if you would kind of hope the chemo would not work, right? You would kind of hope whatever else he's doing holistically would not work. So his score stays high and he gets the transplant faster. And I'm thinking, who heck, nobody wants a transplant, right? It's great. You have a new lease on life and everything else, but if you watch the podcast, I mean, there's almost a year's worth of difficult recovery after a liver transplant. You don't just come home 5 days later and, you're running a marathon. You got tubes, you can't move. You got to have some help. You got to have 24/7 help. I mean, it's hard. And, but I think, once you've gotten the diagnosis, you obviously will pretty much do anything to get fixed.
Sure.
But I'm just in a puzzled situation right now with the doctors, and unfortunately these guys, I don't know. I think when they have to go to med school, they should take nutrition courses, number one, which they don't in most cases. Number two, they should take a communication course, how to communicate, right? They're busy. I get it. They have 1 million patients a day they're cranking through. But I think they lose sight of what actually is that person who's going through that treatment actually thinking. He's an athlete too, was an athlete. It's almost like, hey, you know what? You ran a mile and you just finished the mile. No, by the way, you got to run 70 more miles at the same pace. Mm-hmm. And then after that, maybe you could finish a race. So it plays with your mind and it also plays with your body.
That's a great point. Having gone through it myself with a member of my family, usually when you get cancer, it's the first time you've gotten cancer. You know nothing about cancer.
Right.
You know nothing about the treatment. So I get it. A doctor seeing a cancer patient one right after the other, but for that cancer patient, it's their first time. And that's information I would have liked to have known. Now, I'm not sure I have an option or not, but communication sometimes is lost in the healthcare industry. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway, which I've encouraged him to do, but he has yet to do it, go get a second opinion. Mm-hmm. You, believe it or not, as a patient, still have rights. And he's in an area of the country that has a lot of people that could treat him, that may confirm, what's going on right now, or may offer him a different path. But nonetheless, go ask the questions. Go talk to other people. Not one person knows everything.
Oh, I absolutely agree with that, especially when it's your life on the line. Absolutely. I don't know how to segue from that into something that is more of an irritant rather than a life-ending issue, and that is, and I know you have these all the time, Jim. I hear about them. I'm never invited to them, but the big neighborhood party is another one of your hot takes.
Yeah, this will take 5 seconds, but
it was a tough transition for the professional host to go from. But in any case, well, you got a problem with neighborhood parties?
I actually don't in most cases.
Yes.
It's just more about not necessarily policing the neighborhood party, but being responsible and accountable for the neighborhood party once it's over. So I live on a street. It's a pretty long street. There's probably 30 or so houses on it. And on Sunday, somebody had a big party where the cars were parked probably for, 3/10 to 4/10 of a mile up the road. And of course, they were parked in front of my house. No big deal. And it was an early party. It's not like I could hear it at 11 o'clock at night or anything like that. I think it ended, probably around 9 or so. But there's a lot of people. And parked on both sides of the street and everything else. So the next morning, I'm leaving to go to the YMCA at 5:30 in the morning, and I notice napkins, cups, plates, just littered along people's front yards, probably where the cars were parked. And it just struck me that, people have parties, which is great, but you also got to be responsible for the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And you maybe should go out in the morning and just make sure there's no litter anywhere. that needs to be cleaned up. And I had a funny story. We host a Christmas party every year. Sorry you didn't get invited.
Yeah, I didn't get invited to that.
But we host a Christmas party every year. And
Joe, did you get invited? No.
I remember the next morning, just going out, emptying trash, cleaning up. And I always check, to see if somebody didn't do anything crazy.
Right.
And there's a wallet, sitting on the side of the road. So I obviously picked it up, and it was a guest at the party. And we kind of made fun of her because we gave her the MVP for basically, she took some cookies home, and on the way out on a paper plate, there was like a cookie trail to where the wallet was at the end of the day. So I don't think she ever ate any of the cookies, but we gave her the MVP. Thankfully, she secured her wallet again with all her IDs and cards and everything else. But I'm just encouraging homeowners or apartment renters or whatever you are, if you're going to host, just go out the next day and kind of just do a little reconnaissance just to make sure that your neighbors are not putting away trash from your party.
And I'm just going to push back a little bit, not because I haven't been invited to any of your parties, but you got up at 5:30 in the morning. I'm guessing the people from that party didn't, so they may have later.
No, so I didn't pick it up at 5:30. I waited till the afternoon, evening to see if anything would be picked up, and the same.
I stand corrected then.
Litter was still there. So I did, being a good Samaritan this morning before recycling and trash came, I did stick it into the barrels. And it's clean now, but I shouldn't be the one cleaning it up.
Oh, I think that's a
I'm sure my
valid point.
neighbor drove up and down that street 3 or 4 times yesterday.
Oh, it happened recently.
Sunday. Yeah,
I could tell there was a sense of passion in your voice.
2 days ago. But I've noticed that on other occasions too, so I thought I'd just bring that up today.
Did it ever enter your mind into picking up the trash and putting it on his lawn to make a statement?
It did, but it's way too much.
Too much?
Yeah, we got to move on in life. I mean, I'm not going to heaven for doing that. So, some things you fight over, some things you don't.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to be burning any Teslas. I'm never going to look for Jim Baker there.
Here's a hot take on some 50 Cups tea.
Green tea is known to have a variety of benefits as it contains polyphenols, which helps with lowering inflammation in the body. It also contains L-theanine, which is incredible for cognitive function and mood, and catechins, which support a healthy heart. Polyphenol antioxidants work in aiding weight loss, and the antioxidant properties in polyphenols also kill cancer cells, stopping them from growing, which green tea has the potential to fight cancer.
Visit 50cupstea.com to find out more.
Another issue that's out there, and I know there's some things that have changed too, and that is with credit cards. The kinds of fees you're being paid or being charged, and even retailers now asking for certain credit cards or debit cards and charging you more if you use your credit card. Is that your beef about it, Jim, or do you have a different?
That and just the whole payment thing, which I'll get to in a second. So when I had 50 Cups retail,
yes,
a wildly unsuccessful endeavor.
That's one of the few.
The point of sale merchant did give us the option to be able to charge the consumer the credit card fee. And by law, you have to have some type of signage near the point of sale, the register in this case, to let them know they're being charged. Therefore, the consumer has the option to either go cash or credit. Now, if you use a debit card, in most cases, you're not charged any fees. So we opted not to do that because we thought that might discourage the customers from coming in and buying our products. However, I've noticed more and more it seems to be catching on everywhere over the last 7 or 8 months or so. And it's kind of annoying, because, I think this whole payment society is really trying to push everybody to go digital. But now they're charging you to go digital. Nobody really wants to process cash anymore. But you're rewarded for still using cash. You're penalized now for using a credit card. And I will say that the credit card companies are either really smart or they're also their own worst enemies, because most of these cards, there's 400 different cards everybody's offered. You got your airline cards, you have, points you do whatever, Amazon, everybody's got a card.
Right.
But the more rewards, so to speak, that the consumer gets, the more the merchant is actually charged, for the card to use it. So the average fee is around 2%, but some of those cards sometimes would whack the merchant 3 or 4%. So I could see where they would want to turn around and pass that pass that charge back on the consumer, because that could eat into your profit. And especially in retail, there's not a lot of profit to begin with. So the frustrating piece of this whole thing is everybody is trying to push everybody, again, as I said earlier, to go digital, but we're being penalized for it. So then what happens, I think, at the end is that if I'm going to be charged an extra $2, then I'm probably going to take $2 off the tip. So now you're hurting, the server, in this case as well. So I just don't see any logical reason why these fees have to be pushed back onto the consumer. And I also think there needs to be something done from the credit card world, where these credit card companies, these banks just can't keep charging more and more higher fees, to their merchants.
Oh, I mean, I'm not a banker or a credit card company. I don't know how much it costs to actually process a credit card. It can't be any more costly, can it, than processing a debit card?
No, I think what's happening is I don't think it's a process fee anymore. I think it's more of, if I know you're going to get, once you spend $20,000 with me, I'm going to give you 20,000 points, and then you can go get a free airline ticket.
Right.
Well, in effect, the bank is paying for that airline ticket, right?
And that's how they recoup it.
Yeah. So they don't want to, they want you to pay for your own ticket with the points, right? Or they want the merchant to do it.
Yes.
Right. They don't want to do it themselves to entice you to use their card.
So what's the solution? What if merchants just said no? Well, that's the position you were in. You were worried, but I guess
they can. Yeah. So merchants can go just accept cash only.
Yes.
Right. And if I'm them, I would and I thought about this, put an ATM in the business.
Right.
And then if you own that ATM, you get the extra fee, so you can make money on the ATM machine. Because again, if you're a Wells Fargo customer, for example, and it's just a generic terminal, then Wells Fargo is going to charge a couple bucks for you to go get money. Right.
Right.
So, but again, the consumer's still getting hurt, because the consumer's not walking around with cash because they don't need to, because they have Venmo and they have everything on their phone and they have a couple credit cards. Then for them to get cash is going to cost them money also. But yes, the merchant could accept cash. They could accept debit cards only, or they can just get rid of their entire electronic payment system, which would probably kill them, because everybody's dependent upon it these days. And, so there really is no solution other than you can go to a couple of states where they probably tax you like there's no tomorrow, but these states, maybe some don't, but it's illegal in Connecticut, Florida, Kansas, Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oklahoma, and Texas, where you can't charge credit card fees. So, but my bigger point is this. My mom, who's 86 years old, she has an HOA in her neighborhood. And HOAs, by the way, are absolutely torture to deal with.
Yes.
So she's been writing the check, getting the invoice every month, and paying her monthly dues. Well, they did away with all of that. And they said, hey, go online, and you have 3 different ways to pay. You can pay through an ACH, in parentheses, no fees, or you could pay the credit card, use your credit card, but there's a fee for that. And then there's even a fee for a debit card in this case as well. So I don't know about a lot of 86-year-olds, but especially my mom, she hates going online because they always ask for passwords, and that 2-thing identification you got to do now, verification thing, drives her nuts as well. So anyhow, I go online, set it all up, and somehow the payment doesn't get there for months. So she's getting calls, where's the money, et cetera, et cetera. She calls them back finally, and they say, well, she goes, I set it all up. And they said, well, we were changing banks the same day you set it up.
Oh, man.
So you need to redo it again. In the meantime, you need to pay your late fees and everything else.
What? What?
So I'm thinking, are you kidding me? We're trying to get people to pay electronically again.
Yes.
And you, the merchant in this case, change banks, don't even notify the customer, and you're still charging late fees and interest because you missed an HOA payment.
Mm-hmm. Which wasn't their fault.
And so what is the ultimate, what's the merchant actually, what behavior are they dictating to an 86-year-old person? I'm just going to go ahead and mail you a paper check because you're not going to charge me
Right.
every single month because now I can't trust your ACH system.
Right.
So they've basically, through their behaviors and their lack of empathy to the customer, they are in effect creating the same behavior that they were trying to get rid of before.
It's completely nuts. You know, I was a big Superman comic book fan. I don't know if you were, but there was a series of Bizarro World where everything was upside down. It was the Bizarro Superman taking on the regular Superman. And I feel like I'm living it, Jim. There's two completely different worlds here. It's crazy. I remember when they actually were warning about a digital currency and eliminating the cash society because it would give control to, corporations and government that would control it.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are.
And we're complaining about
They
it.
can't even do it right.
Because they can't even do it right. Now, I've been looking at this on the list for the whole show, and I should have probably brought it up.
But hold on, one more thing.
Oh, okay.
So
I can't say it. You got to stick around for this. Go ahead.
Don't get euros, by the way, if you go to Europe, because basically they don't exist anymore over there. And
They don't.
No. In fact, in some countries, Portugal, one, if you pay more than $100 in cash to anything, you are considered a terrorist.
Really?
So be careful with how much cash you use in Europe. And that's obviously more extreme than here, but clearly over there, they are really pushing everybody to get on a digital payment system.
Makes me wonder why, Jim.
Yeah, well, that's a different talk for a different time.
It is. It is. Okay. I've been dying to talk about this one. I don't know why it's at the bottom of the list. If it were my show, I would have put it at the top. You ready for this? Shark attack.
Yeah.
Now, did you actually have a shark attack? Do you know somebody who had a shark attack?
No. So this morning, I'm listening to a preacher. His name is Louis Giglio.
Okay.
Passion City is his church. It's out of Atlanta and Washington, D.C. So he's talking about salvation and how you could be saved. And it's a 45-minute talk. I'm listening to it as I'm on my run. And he's going through lots of stuff about being saved. And basically, good works isn't going to get you there. You truly have to believe in the Lord and Savior. But nonetheless, he cites this shark attack. So there's a girl last year, a high school kid, 15 years old. Her name is Lulu. And she is swimming off on the coast of Rosemary Beach in the Panhandle in Florida. And she's with her mom and her twin sister. And there's a guy in the water with 3 daughters. There's 2 doctors that happen to be in the water at the same time. And then there's a nurse. And according to the nurse, she says that she had a dream the night before that God told her, you will be part of helping somebody who got attacked by a shark. Now she's at the beach, so maybe she's, I don't know, thinking of reading about sharks. I don't know. That you'll be helping somebody that got attacked by a shark. Here's what you need to do. You need to get 5 beach towels. You need to put them in a box. Put them in a square. You need to take a drawstring from a men's bathing suit, for a tourniquet, et cetera, right?
Right.
So she's got this stuff. And then lo and behold,
God told her that.
God told her
this isn't her dream.
God told her.
All right.
This girl, Lulu, gets attacked by a shark. This father of 3 who's in the ocean with his daughters, not related to Lulu, doesn't even think twice, goes out, sees it, grabs Lulu, brings her back to shore. Her hand is off her arm at that point in time.
Man.
And she's bleeding, has an arterial bleed in her leg. So blood's everywhere. Bring her to shore. Just so happens that 2 doctors are there at shore that can provide real-time treatment, right? Nurse is there. She had this premonition. She's helping basically a community of people help her. She gets airlifted to the nearest trauma center, and then 70 other people work on her over the next, 2 or 3 days. And she goes into rehab, et cetera, et cetera. So a year later, she does this, thanking tour, where she goes back and says thank you to everybody and so on and so forth. And she's doing great. She has a prosthetic hand, but she's golfing, she's surfing again. She lost a ton of blood, so rehab was a long time, but they were able to, obviously, had an arterial bleed. She lost 3/4 of her blood.
Wow.
And she survived. And
amazing.
so it's a good news story, but it's amazing how, through the Lord and through people in general, that this kid was saved, because everybody happened to be at the right place at the right time. And I don't look at that as a coincidence.
Neither do I. I think a lot of people call those God winks as well. There's lots of different ways you describe it, but someday I'd love to do a show where we talk about reality and how what we don't see sometimes impacts it all. And I happen to be a believer in that as well. All we have to do is recognize it, I guess, sometimes, and we refuse to as humans. A lot of us do anyway.
Yeah, and I started thinking too, if that was me when my kids were young and I was in the water,
yeah,
would I have automatically just gone to save that girl? Or have I made sure my kids got to shore? Would I have ran to the shore with them?
Yeah.
Would I have watched? Like, what would I have done? And so, that guy's obviously a hero, because without him, doctors can't do anything. The nurse can't do anything. And he risked his life, risked his kids' lives, because if he missed, maybe the shark lets go and goes after his kids. I don't know, right? But he ends up saving a life and didn't even think twice about it.
It's amazing. I'd like to think that I'd be up to that, but one never knows until you're placed in that situation. Since you're hesitant, I hope someone else is there if I'm in that position. No, I'm kidding. I think you're the kind of man that wouldn't hesitate. And I love that kind of story, though. I really do, because it's bigger than all of us, isn't it? And it sure beats pounding a toy Tesla to death.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a much bigger
If you want to know more about the story, you can go just do Google search Rosemary Beach and put in Lulu, L-U-L-U, and, there's a million stories. She's been on Fox News. She's been on People magazine. She's been in local press and everything else. So thankfully she's doing great. But it's just a testament to how the Lord and how we work.
Amen. This tea is wonderful, by the way. And it's too bad you don't have it yet. There is a way to get it, Jim. How do they get this wonderful tea?
Yeah, well, if you go to 50cupstea.com,
yep.
We are sold out on a couple of products right now, but there's others that you can get. And this is just a blend of English breakfast tea along with some sugar and some lemons. And but you can personalize your tea any way you want. It's great hot or cold, and it's good for you.
It is. I noticed that cap there. I don't want to put you on the spot, but that's a pretty cool cap. Do people buy that cap?
They
Give them out? What do you do?
They can.
Beautiful.
But I usually give it away based on monthly specials. In fact, I got to do the April
To give
special.
it away to the people you invite to the parties? Is that kind of a party thing?
I use it as a trash collector.
Beautiful, Jim. Always is a pleasure, man. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on Hot Takes 50 Cups. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to visit our website at 50cupstea.com for more great content and delicious organic teas, and listen and watch us on all the leading platforms. Stay connected with us on Instagram at 50cupstea, YouTube, and TikTok. And don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends. Until next time, keep sipping and stay united.